everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our chapter 7 PowerPoint. I can't multitasking and speak and navigate this page at the same time. That's horrible. Nothing like that to inspire your confidence. We are going to continue our discussion about unipolar depression. So what causes unipolar depression? Remember, this is just speaking, since it's unipolar, it falls on one end of the depressive spectrum. We're looking at just depressive symptoms, major depressive episode, as listed in our previous slide when we talked about what constitutes a depressive episode, what duration of time, those kind of things. So there are biological factors that are at play here. It could be genetic. Twin studies have found a high link in family members between developing depression. So there could be some genetic component we're not exactly understanding. And there tend to be biochemical factors at work too. We find that there's low activity of norepinephrine and serotonin working throughout the body. And so as we saw with those neurotransmitters, they are largely responsible for kind of like those, I don't want to say happy, because I feel like that diminishes the importance of their role, but those feel-good feelings. So they're both at equally low levels with unipolar depression. Well, not equally. I'm saying they're both low. It could vary based on the individual. But what I really want to focus on in this PowerPoint is the psychological views of unipolar depression. So we understand there's a genetic component, and we kind of looked at the diathesis stress model and, how predisposed is someone to develop a disorder versus their environmental circumstances. Well, the cognitive behavioral view is very important, as we've seen going throughout this text. The author really emphasizes that cognitive behavioral view because it's looking at how people think and the resulting behaviors and vice versa. So Lewinson looked at how changes in rewards and punishments in one's life can emphasize, kind of trigger depression. So what he found was that rewards and punishments, like as they change or decrease, can actually lead to higher levels of depression. And rewards can be something like praise or the good feelings from interacting with family, for example. So when we say social rewards, that's what we mean, like the interaction in and of itself is rewarding. And so like we talked about with that type of thinking in, when someone experiences depression, maybe they think, oh, well, I'm worthless. I don't deserve to talk to people, so I'm not going to go to that party. Then they don't go to that party. They're not getting the social rewards, and that kind of punishes them in a sense. And it contributes to this vicious cycle of thinking they're not worthy, when, in actuality, it's a disease that lies to you. And I'm going to say that over and over again in case any of you are struggling with this. Just know it lies to you, and it's going to change your cognitions in ways that just are not true, okay? I know that's in a nutshell. It's easier for me to say that, not being in that scenario, but just know that if you've ever experienced that, it is your mind kind of lying to you, and it's based on these cognitive patterns and behavioral patterns we've developed. I like to use we, as a collective, because we're all in this together. So when I say we, that's what I mean. And Aaron Beck, he actually thought it was a result of negative thinking, maladaptive attitudes, a cognitive triad, errors in thinking, and automatic thoughts, or kind of reflexive thoughts people with depression tend to exhibit. This is very important, okay? The cognitive triad may or may not be a question on your test. So, you may want to look that up in your text. But on the whole, we're looking at how do people with depression tend to think. If y'all ever seen Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh, he's always like, I'm gonna go, but I'm not gonna like it. And he's just very pessimistic, has a negative attitude, always a mopey kind of thing. That's kind of like depression manifested as a person or cartoon, whatever you want to say. So think of Eeyore, right? That negative thinking, maladaptive attitudes, so very poor attitude adjustment. The people with depression tend to not be able to see the bright side of things as a part of their cognitive patterns. With the cognitive triad, they don't evaluate correctly themselves, their future, or their experiences. Okay, that's the word I'm going to use. they may have an experience and basically misinterpret it to be something kind of negative, and it may lend itself to these further errors in thinking and these reflexive, negative thoughts. And in negative in this sense, I do mean bad. And Seligman focused on learned helplessness. He did a whole study on dogs in cages, and this is horrible if you're an animal person, I'm sorry. But he had dogs in cages, and he basically shocked the bottom of the cage and taught the animals how to stop it to see if they would stop the shock if they could. Well, he learned that eventually, through different manipulations of the study, that animals develop a sort of learned helplessness. So sometimes there were points where the dogs didn't even try to stop the shock because they thought the effort was fruitless. And the same thing can kind of happen to people. So it's the perception based on experiences that one has no control over the reinforcements in their life. So if you have parents who, I don't want to trigger anyone, let's say if I had a child and I was consistently negative to that child for every behavior they did, everything they did, I never rewarded the good things but only focused on the punishing. That child may develop learned helplessness because they think no matter what I do, I can't win with mom. I can't, she never says anything good. So that child is now going to think that they don't have control over the reinforcements in their life. I'm consistently going to be negative and berate them. I'm not, because I know these theories, right? So that develops a learned helplessness that, I'm just going to keep screwing it up. It doesn't really matter. And this is a type of internal, global, stable thinking that results from depression. And this is going to be a question on your exam. So if you're watching this, you're welcome for the gift. It's the idea that internally we are responsible for our outcomes. It's global. We kind of generalize it on a grand scale, that thought pattern. And it's also stable. We think, it was the same in this situation. It's going to be the same in every situation here on out. So it's very exaggerated, very negative, and very enduring. And these types of thought patterns, this learned helplessness, and it also lends themselves to establishing that sense of hopelessness we see in people with depression. And there's different sociocultural views that are pretty well explained in the book, so I won't address them for the sake of time in our PowerPoint. But I did want to include this nice visual for the different theories as to why gender and depression levels vary. So there's different theories based on gender. So I have the theories listed as well as the explanation for you, just so you have something kind of clean to look at instead of all that bulky text on that page. So let's get to bipolar disorder, the diagnostic checklist. With manic episodes, these are those episodes of euphoria that I was talking about previously. So let's get into the specifics. What are we talking about with that euphoria? You keep using that word, Elizabeth. Explain. Well, for 1 week or more, the person's going to display a continually abnormal, inflated, unrestrained, or irritable mood, as well as continually heightened energy or activity for most of the day. So these people might feel very I'm invincible. Sometimes this results in them fighting people, like getting into fights, exhibiting dangerous behaviors, engaging in unprotected sex, a lot of high-risk behaviors, as well as, exaggerated spending, and, you'll see in number 2, they kind of list some of these behaviors. So the person will also experience, in this manic episode, 3 of the following symptoms: grandiosity or overblown self-esteem. So this is like thinking you are just it, but you have no real evidence. It's overblown. Reduced need for sleep, increased talkativeness, rapidly shifting ideas or the sense that one's thoughts are moving very fast. Attention is pulled in many directions. It's kind of like you can't sit still. You have so many things you want to do. Heightened activity or agitated movements, and excessive pursuit of risky and potentially problematic activities. And this causes significant distress or impairment in their life. Bipolar disorder is one of actually the hardest to treat. We're going to talk about this in the next chapter because sometimes people who experience the manic episodes, when they go to take like a psychopharmacological intervention, like a medicine for bipolar disorder, sometimes they miss the manic episodes. They don't feel those those manic highs like they used to because of the medications, so they don't want to take their meds. And kind of anecdotal, but I have an aunt who struggles with bipolar disorder, and she has said that to me. And of course, I was an undergrad thinking I knew everything about psychology. But it does fit the bill of what we typically see as as someone progresses their bipolar disorder treatment. Now, there's two different types, bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. So, bipolar 1 disorder is going to have the occurrence of a manic episode. And a hypomanic or major depressive episode may precede or follow the manic episode. So you're going to have a manic episode. And either before that or after, you're going to have a major depressive episode as characterized in that checklist that I put forth in, I think, slide number 3 or 4. Bipolar 2 disorder, you're going to have a history of major depressive episodes, a presence or history of hypomanic episodes, but no history of a manic episode. So a true manic episode that we see on this slide is going to be characteristic of bipolar 2. Okay? Nope. Scratch that. See, even I mess up. Is going to be characteristic of bipolar 1, not bipolar 2. That's what I meant to say. I was testing you. So, those manic episodes are only going to be seen in bipolar 1 disorder because we are switching between those polar ends of the spectrum, between having that major depressive episode and a manic or hypomanic state. Okay, so it's kind of flipping. But remember, this is a long period of time we're flipping. We're not talking about, someone getting angry and saying, "Whoa, you're so bipolar," right? We don't use it like that. People tend to use it in common lexicon, but that's incorrect. And frankly, it's insensitive to the people who struggle with this disorder. Bipolar 2 disorder, remember, that is going to have no history of a manic episode. Maybe a little bit of hypomania, so a little bit, but not extreme levels that we see in a true manic episode. So what causes bipolar disorders? Well, it could be neurotransmitters. So researchers believe it could be something similar to depression, but what we find here is high norepinephrine activity, low serotonin, whereas in depression we've seen low norepinephrine and serotonin. It could be an issue with the ions and an improper transfer process between the outside and the inside of the neurons. That's that whole sodium potassium channels we talked about when the neuron fires, opening up the channels so that the flood of the action potential enters the neuron so it can fire. I've included a video right here in case you need a refresher. It's only 14 minutes, but it's from Harvard, like on extension school, so like online kind of Harvard stuff. It's a great video. You should check it out if you want to remember that. We're also looking at there could be abnormal structures in the hippocampus, cerebellum, lower amounts of gray matter, amygdala, prefrontal cortex. Again, this is what we've seen in people with bipolar disorders. It's not a specific science, but we're trying to get closer with the research every day. These are just general trends we're finding. Of course, individuals can vary. And genetic factors. I thought this was amazing, this number. 40 to 70% of monozygotic twins or identical twins who share the same egg. When one person develops bipolar disorder, 40 to 70% of the twins pairs that we've seen, the other twin develops it, which is like extremely high. And there's much more research to be discovered, as I kind of stated earlier. Mood disorders are quite prevalent and the information is changing, right? A lot of people are self-diagnosing now, kind of romanticizing it. And so we have a lot more research to do. So make sure you check out our supplementary materials. You'll find a lot of supplemental information that kind of helps enrich our course. And like I say, it's not required, but it will help you contextualize it a little better. And I hope you all have a great week, and let me know if you have any questions.